M&P 2.0, first 100, starts now. Oh, what a sad time we live in when apps and firearms use the same type of naming convention. But it is what it is, and here is the 2.0 M&P from Smith & Wesson. And I'm just busting on them because I use that terminology for everything too. And a lot of folks have been pretty excited about this 2.0. I'm not necessarily jumping up and down. I am anxious, though, to get out and get a first 100 through this thing and find out how the differences that they've made translate into practicality, you know, in terms of shooting. And I can tell you that this grip texture is going to be first and foremost among the things that are noticed by the shooter. Earlier this year, I did the review on the 45 Shield, which was the first M&P gun to come with this type of aggressive grip texture all the way around, and it is fantastic. And I knew then that they were going to eventually incorporate that into all of the M&Ps. So I think most shooters are going to be very pleased with this new grip, and I'm, like I say, I'm anxious to get it out and shoot it with this grip, but I've already got some experience with it because of the Shield. Let's just take a quick look at how it comes in the box. I literally did just pick it up, so this is exactly how you'll get it. And it does come with 4 different backstrap options. One, of course, is already installed. So you've got large, you've got small, and medium. The large and the medium both have this beaver tail attachment on it, and the one that's on it is the the one that's on it is medium. So what does that make this? That makes this the medium large, right? Alright, so we got one that is designated as medium large, and like most makers do, they put the medium on it from the factory, which is probably a good choice, and it feels very comfortable to me, and I've always wound up liking either the medium or the small. And it comes with 2 magazines. There is a place where the foam can be removed and a 3rd magazine can be provided, so there could be future options there with special pricing or special deals and promotions and things like that. But for now, 2 magazines. They are 17 round magazines, same as previous full-sized M&P 9. So I also believe that they are fully interchangeable. I will prove or disprove that here shortly. Hang in there, guys. We'll get to the shooting stuff in a minute. All right, specifications real quick on this pistol before we get it out and get it dirty. Talked about the capacity, 17+1. The barrel length is 4.25 inches. That's 4¼ inches. It is a stainless steel barrel, and it is coated with an Armor Night finish. Overall length of the pistol is 7.4 inches, and I'll talk about why that number is different and significant in a minute. The sights are steel. They're 3-dot, and they are the same type of sights as the other M&Ps, like the M&P Pro and so forth. Good set of sights. The weight of the pistol is 24.7 ounces. The slide is also stainless steel, and it is also coated with the Armor Night finish. Smith & Wesson doesn't tell us the width, height, or trigger pull on this gun, so I'm going to measure those myself, and we'll find out what those are. And I'm a little curious on a couple things, especially the width, because I think the slide is a little bit thinner on this gun than on the previous version. And I just happen to have a previous version right here. This is the VTAC M&P. 4¼ inch. Everything is same, except obviously the color, but this is the, I guess, the 1.0, right? And the 2.0. So I'm trying to compare these guns a little tiny bit. This is not a comparison video, so I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit trail. But just to let you look at the differences between 1.0 and 2.0. Now, I told you that the overall length number was fairly significant. The reason is this extended beaver tail on the polymer frame of all M&Ps up to now is gone on the 2.0. I have not made any decision about how I feel about that, so I've not formed any opinion. I may while I'm out shooting it, or I may not, but just so you know, that is something of some difference. Could be significant, or it could be insignificant, I guess. Magazine release button is steel instead of polymer. It is, of course, reversible. Slide stop is still an ambidextrous control, as it has always been on the M&P. Takedown is the same. There's a little bit of a difference here. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later and try to divine what that might be. There is some steel inserted into the front of the polymer, and the idea is to make this a more rigid, more stiff pistol, more controllable, more accurate, and things like that. We have the semi-useful serrations on the front, just like the 45 shield, and I talked about it with the 45 shield. I said they were kind of more for aesthetic purposes than anything, and I kind of still feel that way. That's not a whole lot to get a hold of to be real practical, but it looks okay. So I asked what people wanted to know about the new 2.0 M&P. One of the questions was, can you use the slide stop as a slide release? Yes, you can. Okay, let me just take some shots at 7 yards and just sort of try and talk about the experience and what I'm thinking while I'm shooting. One of the questions also was, I did a short video about this new slide stop control, and so there's been some questions around that. Can you still rack the slide like normal and all that? Well, yeah, you definitely can. I just shook that a live round. Okay, 7 yards. I'm just going to go for that little square dot. Can a square be a dot? I don't know. I always thought dots were round. Can you guys hear this reset? It's definitely more tactile and more audible. This trigger does feel very good to me. I love the grip texture. Grip texture is the same again as it is on the 45 shield, and I like it a lot. It really is very abrasive, so sensitive hands might actually not like it that much, but if you want your hands to be kept still in your grip, these will get the job done. And at 7 yards offhand, that is not an unacceptable group. I'll take that every day. Same sight picture. Trigger feels nice. I'll try and talk more about that as we go. Hopefully you were able to hear that reset. You can definitely feel the reset better as well. And the break is clean and crisp. Maybe go for some headshots, see what I can do up there. Older magazine from generation 1. Again, using the slide stop as a slide release is not a problem. Actually, Works better than it did on some of the earlier M&Ps. Magazines are compatible, so if you got older magazines, they will work just fine. And of course your new magazines will work in your old guns as well. There's a little take up after the reset, which makes it a little springy. But the brake is much cleaner than I'm used to with Smiths, the M&Ps. And it is a bit lighter. And it does shoot nice groups. So far, I'm not finding anything not to like. Alright, so I got some tools out here to do a little bit of measurement, and the first thing I'm going to measure, let's make sure we got a 0. The first thing I'm going to measure is the width, and I'm going to start with the old M&P because I want to find out the difference. Okay, so this slide is 1 inch and 74 thousandths. Okay, this slide, same area, is 1 inch 99, or actually 1100, so 1 inch 100 thousandths. So I guess I got it backwards. I guess what I had been hearing was either backwards or I heard it backwards. So the new one is thicker than the old one. That's an interesting change. It's not often that gun makers make a gun thicker. So let's check something out here real quick. This is a Blade Tech holster for the Smith & Wesson M&P. You can probably see that engraved in there. This is the previous version. VTAC slips right in there. This is the new one, 2.0, and it goes in a little snug. I can feel the difference, but it does fit. So if I back off on these tension screws a little bit, it'll probably be just fine. So if you're worried about whether or not your existing holsters might fit the 2.0, and that's certainly something I consider because that's a big expense every time you change guns, it looks like, unless you've got a very, very custom holster, it should fit. If you've got adjustable tension on your holster, you should be able to get it to fit. Alright, just a real rough height measurement. Looks like, I'm going to call it 5.5. 5.5 heavy for the height. So with the thickness, we said 1.1 inch thick on the slide. Right? Now that's not the whole pistol. If I want to get the whole pistol, I'll come down here to the slide stops where it's 1305. And we're still heavier. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I guess that's probably due to opening up the width so that they can put that steel insert in there. That had to come from somewhere, right? I have not heard anything so far about the trigger. I know some people have gotten a hold of these guns. I know that some of the usual suspects on YouTube have reviewed them, or at least debuted them, but I haven't seen anything or heard anything really about the trigger. And to me, that's the most important thing. If they didn't change the trigger, then all these other changes are just fluff. in my humble opinion. That is, of course, just an opinion. 6.75. Alright, let me compare that to the VTAC, which, disclaimer, the VTAC already has an improved trigger. A very nice one, actually. .05. So, again, this is right out of the box. These parts will wear in as the gun is shot and even dry fired. The trigger is generally only going to get slightly lighter as time goes on. But right out of the box, the trigger is about, quarter of a pound lighter than the VTAC, which is already got an improved trigger in it. So it looks like they did pay attention to popular demand and improved the trigger on this gun, which is very important because that's the one thing that probably needed to be improved the most. So without getting it out to the range yet, I can say that the grip is a big thumbs up. I loved it on the 45 Shield, and I love it just as much on the M&P. I think the extra thickness is just a necessary byproduct of putting these steel inserts into the polymer. And let's just take a quick look. Still have to pull the trigger, or work your little don't have to pull the trigger lever to get the slide off. But so you really can't see from the inside anything extra in terms of that steel. So it literally is inside the molded. So they're doing that during the molding process. They're molding around that. So that's pretty interesting. Certainly is going to make it much more rigid out front. Everything else looks to be very much the same. Parts may be upgraded a little bit in terms of quality or material, but I don't see any real design change to talk about. Not at this point. Looks like we've got a steel guide rod and a flat wire recoil spring, and that I like a lot. Let's just take a quick look at the trigger in function. So again, it's our M&P trigger. It articulates. It's got that joint in the center. That's the trigger safety mechanism. Pull our trigger back, and you've still got a pretty good amount of take-up. There's still a little bit of grit. Can you hear it? Now we're at the wall. Nice break. The break is better than what I'm used to on most M&Ps. It's more crisp. It doesn't have that sponginess, and it doesn't have that I don't know, that feeling like there's a vibration, for lack of a better way to describe it. Now let's see what the reset looks like. Short, much more tactile. I know my M&P 45, which is probably the oldest M&P I own, is has got no tactile response whatsoever to the reset. So that's a nice improvement. A little bit more creep. So you got maybe a 1/16 of an inch, or maybe a 32nd of an inch till you're back to the wall, and then that nice break. It does show some promise. So I'm anxious to put 100 rounds through it. Interested to know what you folks think about this change in the beaver tail, which now it basically doesn't have a beaver tail. It's just sort of a normal grip tang, like most polymer guns have, without any extended beaver tail. You still have that nice low bore axis, possibly even lower, and maybe, not to put words in Smith & Wesson's mouth or speak for them, but maybe that was part of the impetus for removing that. Maybe it allows you to get a higher hold without that beaver tail up there. Who knows? Not sure about this. I heard a rumor, or I heard someone opine, that that might be in response to the fact that you can ram a loaded magazine into an M&P and the slide will slam shut. Some people didn't always like that. You know, if you're shooting a match, that's great, but some people didn't like that. Maybe this has something to do with that, because that is part of the slide stop assembly. I don't know. We'll find out. Let's get it out and shoot it. So I know one of the questions or discussion points about the 2.0 is, you know, will it fit your old holsters for your first generation M&P? I've heard some people say no, and I don't agree with that, because so far every holster I've got for my first generation M&P I can fit this gun into. Not perfectly in some cases, but it does fit, and maybe with just a little bit of adjustment. For right now, I'm wearing a multi-holsters custom Kydex holster, and it fits just about perfectly in this, except right down here at sort of the one of the bulge points on the frame, I can see a little bit of Kydex marking on there, and that's about it. I really don't see anything else. So that being kind of the widest part of the pistol, tiny bit of Kydex mark right there. I bet you that's going to wipe right off. But the answer is, so far, yes, it will fit your holsters. So I talked back at the workbench about doing a little bit of a comparison between the first edition or first generation of M&P. This is the VTAC, so this is not your garden variety M&P. It's already got a much improved trigger and different sights and all that kind of stuff. So I thought this actually makes a better comparison than just plain Jane, because the thing about the M&P is that it has evolved over the years anyway. They continue to make small improvements in the trigger and so on. And so I thought comparing it to this VTAC would probably be as good, because this, quite frankly, is about the nicest M&P I own, at least in 9mm, as far as that goes. So I'm going to put about 15 rounds through this one and refresh my memory on how it feels to shoot. Then I'm going to shoot the new 2.0 again, see how they compare. This one has a nice trigger. It's crisp and tactile. All right. So that's a very acceptable trigger to me. It's a crisp, light trigger with a pretty short and tactile reset. Of course, it's sporting the moss-colored Talon grip, which makes it very comfortable. Okay, so memory refreshed on this. Let me compare it now. So back to the 2.0. The trigger feels Maybe a little bit grittier still on that initial pull with all that take up. The reset feels shorter than on the VTAC. I can actually feel the difference too, not having that extended beaver tail. Doesn't really bother me, but it is something I can notice. I would say they're very close in comparison. The take up initially on the first trigger pull is smoother on the VTAC than it is on the 2.0, but the reset is a little bit shorter and the brake feels a little bit lighter and just a little bit crisper on the 2.0 than it did on the VTAC. So as to whether or not Smith & Wesson has paid attention to people's pleas and has made any improvements in the trigger, I'd say yes, they have. In my opinion, I think they certainly have given it an effort. So it's not like they're not listening to us. All right, so this is my buddy Charlie. Charlie's a shooter, and Charlie shoots a lot of M&P, don't you, Charlie?
I do. I have 7 of them.
Yeah. All right, so you've never shot the 2.0 yet?
I have not.
All right, so
been very curious.
Give it a try and just tell me what you think, especially about the trigger, because that's what everybody wants to know.
Okay, well, give it a try. All right, I liked it. It's a little longer reset than I'm used to, but it's a world of difference compared to the original.
Right.
I like it better than the Walthers. I've had the PPQs, 9 and 40. I've had CZs. I've had a bunch of different things. As a stock gun, this is a heck of a lot better than their stock versions. And it's a world of difference between the original M&Ps.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's definitely tolerable.
Okay, I'm about wrapping it up here with the M&P 2.0 today. And sorry about all the background noise. It's like a war zone out here. One halfway decent day and they come out of the woodwork, don't they? A few parting shots on the 2.0. Holsters, whether or not it'll fit your holster, you know, I can't guarantee. It fits both of mine, but both of mine were made for M&P Pro. I did notice that the VTAC doesn't really want to fit in the holster, the VTAC being too big to fit. So your mileage may vary, so that's something you want to check out. As far as the new slide stop control, it works flawlessly so far today. When I'm finished this magazine, this will be about 220 rounds. So this is a very healthy and robust first 100. No flaws whatsoever, no failures of any kind as I expected with an M&P. I didn't talk about the mag release too much, but I did notice, you know, when I was just doing a little bit of dry practice with it, and I certainly noticed today, the mag catch is very nice. It is all steel, as I had mentioned, and there's like a tiny little hole through it, so it's kind of a hollow steel, but it is a little bit stiffer and more responsive than the previous mag catches. So this one, particularly for you competitors, should be a plus. You should like that. The grip, I like the texture a lot. The rigidity is not something I can really notice, not under the conditions that I've put the gun through today. That's something that, you know, I could only notice looking at, super slow footage, or if I was trying to do maybe, more precision work or something like that. The grip angle doesn't really seem to be altered much, other than, of course that's going to change with the different back straps a little bit, but with this medium back strap, I'm not really noticing any kind of significant change to the grip angle. The sights are basically the same, and I like them. They're very good. Trigger, I think, is improved. I like the way the trigger feels. I like the way it operates, especially for an out-of-the-box production gun. I think Smith has made nice strides there. If your only criticism of the M&P has been that it had a squishy trigger, or it had a lot of grit in the trigger and all that, then you might want to pick one of these up at your local gun store and at least dry fire it a couple times, because they have made some nice improvements in the trigger. So that's it. So far, 220 rounds in, I'm pretty happy with this gun. I think that Smith & Wesson's obviously going to have a successful product on their hand. They're going to sell a lot of these. If you're on the fence, I don't know, I think it's got a lot going for it.